Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of A Little Jaded. We are so excited to bring on a new guest today. This is going to be a very exciting topic that I'm sure a lot of listeners are pretty passionate about and are excited to learn more about. So I'm going to throw it over to my co-host Joanna, who's going to introduce our guest.
Hey guys. Yeah, we're super excited because I feel like every time we have an episode about this topic, which is touring, concerts, live events, all of that, everyone loves to hear about it. I know it's like one of the most interesting fields, and also I think one of the hardest fields to kind of learn about or to really get into. It's not something, this is something that Kelly and I were talking about. This isn't something you can really take a school course on. And most of the events and, production stuff that you learn about in school is not this. So we're really excited. Today's guest, her name is Rocky Rodriguez. She has, I believe it's 10 years under her belt as a
Yeah.
professional in events, touring, production, all of that. She's fresh off of a UK touring run with the band As It Is. And you've had experiences touring with a bunch of other bands like Unwritten Law, I know was a big one for you. And yeah, we're going to get into all of that. But welcome, Rocky.
Thank you. Stoked to be here. Stoked to talk about it. Definitely not something that is easy to learn about. And even when you find the information, people gatekeep it like crazy. So I'm more than happy to open up this conversation and talk about it because it was really hard for me, even 10 years ago, to get into it as well.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I mean, we saw each other recently. We've worked shows and things together before. And something that stuck out to me that you said before, and we'll get into it later, of course, like the details, but something that you said to me was like how you don't want to be a gatekeeper and you want to, teach people things that you had to kind of, stumble your way through so that it makes it easier for the people coming up. And I feel like that's kind of the purpose of the podcast and why I feel like you're like the perfect person to talk about this because you'll talk your shit. You'll just like say what you need to
Yes.
say and like what like like what's really happening. So I'm excited. It's going to be really fun. But yeah, just to kind of give everybody a little bit of background about you, how you got started, like we would love to hear just like how you found yourself in the field, like 10 years ago, where were you at? How did you start? And like was that something that you always saw for yourself working in concerts, going on tours? And what steps did you take to kind of finding that footing in the beginning?
Yeah. So I just grew up loving concerts so much. Before I was old enough to go to them, like my parents would get me tour DVDs. Like I watched Avril's tour DVD so many times, and I remember being so excited seeing the San Jose date. I was like, I was out there waiting in line, and she's riding around on this golf cart. I just knew that I loved music so much, and this industry is not something I actually ever saw for myself. I had an entirely different trajectory. I was set to go into medical school. I got accepted into this really prestigious program called the Stanford Medical Youth Science Program before my senior year of high school. I lived on campus for a whole summer, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And they were like, 2% of you will not go into this field. And I was like, losers, that's not going to be me. But beautifully, it was me because I was able to shadow under a chief medical examiner. And he straight up told me, like, you have the intellect, you have the drive, but even this program is not going to tell you like the personal sacrifice, which is like, he's had a bunch of kids and missed the birth of some of them. He hasn't been there for a lot of anniversaries and close birthday parties, and he's like, you have to love this more than anything else because you're on call 24/7. You're going to be in medical debt until you're like late 40s. He's like, of course it's going to get ramified, but like with your guys' generation, I just don't, he was just being very realistic. And as crushing as it was to hear that at like 17, the, the first thing that came to my mind was like, yeah, I would only do that for something like music. So had I already been accepted into college on a full ride as a medical student, and I was like, or a bio major on the tracks to being a medical student. And I had a midlife crisis at 19, canon event, you can't escape it.
Yep.
Major like 3 times, and then I found psychology, and that like changed everything. But in those journeys, I was like doing lemonade stands to save up to Warp Tour. The second I got my license, I was like, I'm just going to any show that I can. Like I would go to Arizona on a Amtrak bus on the weekend just to go see bands like Crown the Empire, Pierce the Veil, Sleepy with Sirens, Paris, like all these just integral bands. I couldn't see My Chemical Romance because they were broken up, but I did save
You
tickets
made
there
up for that though.
eventually. Yeah, I made up for that. But yeah, I just loved it so much. And I asked questions to everybody that would listen to me. And I'm sure I was super annoying as a teenager, and you always feel bad like being the fangirl. But I was just like, how did you do this? Because quite honestly, I was like, none of these people look that smart. And they were just like a bunch of macho guys who were just really mean. Like I would just be buying a t-shirt. I'm sure this is such a universal experience. And it's just a guy who's texting, doesn't care. There's barely any like readable signage. The t-shirts are flopped on the table. And you're like, can I see a medium and large? He's like, I don't know, just take it. And I hated that, but I still asked questions. So I was like, if you can do this, I can do this. And I didn't know how people got into it. And it was Crown the Empire's merch guy who ended up quitting his merch career with that band to start his own band. And he asked me if I would do merch for his band. And I immediately just said yes. And at that point, I was halfway through college, had no idea about how I was going to make that happen, except that I knew that I had to, because I knew that there wasn't going to be another opportunity to do this. Like, it's not like any other career where it's like, oh, like finish school and then you can just go for it. Like, just get your degree. Like, that wasn't an option. I knew how hard it was.
Mhm.
And he straight up said, I'm stupid and I can do it. So like you would be able to smash it. And that just led me on to a whole touring career where I made college work. I did like my schoolwork on the road. I lied to my university, said I had a Warner Brothers record like sponsorship, internship. I wrote fake letters and I just said, let me do my work remotely. If I fail, I fail. If I don't, like I would fly home just for midterms. And so yeah, I toured and went to college and I finished both because college was still really important to me because I got myself a full ride. And then I just haven't stopped, except the pandemic, but we don't talk about that.
Right.
But yeah,
Wow.
it all came about just from being such an avid concert goer. I was like, I have to be part of this. Like to be able to go to a show once, you save up for weeks and you meet all your friends and you plan the outfits and you save up the money for merch. And I was like, to do that every night and to get to travel, it just seems like Alice in Wonderland. I was like, I have to do it. So the
Mhm.
second I got to, I just did not stop.
I love it. I had no idea in another life you were going to be a doctor.
Yeah. Much to
Dude,
my parents' dismay in the beginning. They were like, no, where did we go wrong? And I was like, you brought me to Avril Lavigne at 7 and put me in a mosh pit. Like, what do you mean?
Right, right. Oh my God, that is amazing. That I think that's so cool because that's something that we talk about all the time, like pivoting and, find like maybe where you started isn't necessarily, the end goal and like how to pivot. And like it's really scary to do the
Yeah.
whole, oh, I'm gonna change my major. I'm gonna just, a doctor is a practical job. And like, the industry again it's not that like what you were explaining, it's not like you go to school and then you get your job. Like in the middle of being in school you also have to like you got to network like crazy, you got to do all these different things, like it's not a conventional thing.
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
gonna say, as a fellow psychology grad,
Yeah.
it's definitely something that we don't necessarily talk about in the sense that a lot of people come in with a set path. And then you get to graduation and you're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. But for you, I think it's so compelling that you spent that time in university pivoting and going after things that actually drove you to something that you really wanted. Because I think a lot of us, we tend to have a plan or we have dreams and then we don't actually go after them. And then we kind of like sit back and we're like, oh, I should have just done that when I had the time or the chance. But I think it's really like great testament to like putting all that hard work into something and getting something in return. So I applaud you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was
So,
definitely
oh,
weird,
sorry.
but it was a weird time, but I just felt like I had to do it. Like there was a sense of urgency around it. And there's just
Mhm.
something about when you're on the right track where it just, like the world feels different, like a veil like dropped where you're like, oh, this is happening. Almost like right before you get on a roller coaster ride, I was like, oh, like this is
Mhm.
like, it's just addicting, that feeling. And you're like, I have to keep doing it. Like I feel like I'm on the right path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that helps you through the scary points of being like, what am I doing? I'm throwing my whole life away. But I was like, no, this is something I can do. Like, I'm going to go after it.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary. Like it's something that takes a lot. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and in the beginning, it can be very like, is this going anywhere? Am I making the right decision? Like, but it's always the people who stick through are the most passionate, are the ones who care the most, and the ones who are meant to do it. Obviously, now 10 years, like, obviously everything was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly, do you want to go into the next question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, going from that like abstract idea of trying to just go and do it, and you've been like, you said that you were also helping with merch and things like that, like the idea of touring and prepping for these types of shows. Like what is your touring experience like? Because I know that we just mentioned that you
Mhm.
um are currently or were on tour in the UK. Did I miss
Yeah,
that?
I just got off a headliner tour with As It
Yeah.
Is.
So how was that experience for you touring? Um, and also like, for example, going through such a big tour. Um, and how does it also differ from your like gigging experiences just from your own city?
Yeah, so I actually never even got the opportunity to gig in my own city. So I get often asked a lot, like, where can I join? And I always give the advice to like just plug into your local scene, but that's actually something I never did. Maybe it's because I'm a little jealous I never got to. But yeah, I just went straight into tours, and the first band I ever worked for were not very good, and but they had a really good team behind them, and they were getting huge tours. Like the way that Issues, I don't know if you guys are like familiar with this band called Issues. They're a little canceled now too, but they had a great team behind them. And they were putting them on huge tours. Like I saw Issues open for Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens at the
Nice.
Catalyst in Santa Cruz. And even I think like Sky, their bassist, was just like, we should not have been opening those shows, but we had a team that believed in us. Similarly, the first band I worked for had I was on tour with like Enter Shikari, Dance Gavin Dance, and I was like, what the heck? Like I was just listening to these people, and now I want a full blown like full US run with them. In the beginning, I definitely there was no prepping for it. I didn't know what I was doing. I like brought little note cards and was like, okay, I'm gonna make signs for the t-shirts. And I did, do you have a cash box? Do you have a fanny pack? Do we take digital payments? Like it was all just figuring it out and adapting. And I always joke that I had a really rough childhood, so it prepared me fabulously for tour because it is just a lot of adapting and a lot of thinking on your toes and being resourceful. And to this day, I still run into gigs where I'm like, I've never had to set up merch on a staircase before, but now I know that I have, and I know that I can do it, you know? So there wasn't prep. It was just having a good attitude about like, okay, this definitely sucks for the opening band. There's no lighting in this corner. There's no table. There's no racks. They're taking 25% of our merch fee, and we sold two t-shirts. And the rep wasn't even cool enough to be like, oh, that's okay. Keep the money. They're like, we're going to go take 25% of your $40. So it's just like being
Wow.
positive and adapting was really important. And it was also just so fresh and exciting. I was like, oh, who cares if it's a bad day? Like, I'm out here doing it. Like, I'm waking up in a different city. So that's cool. Now I'm like a full blown merch director for both Unwritten Law and As It Is. So I'm an integral part of the designing process for the merch. And that really is based around what the band is doing. If we're promoting a new album, if they're touring on a new album or like a reissue or something like that, or they just haven't been out for a while. The idea of playing through records is a huge theme right now. Like everybody's having bands play their most iconic albums all the way through, or like 25 years of this album. So I've
Mhm.
done a lot of that with both Unwritten Law and As It Is. So I'm helping design the merch and help encapsulate that idea or that branding through the merch. I'm in charge of ordering all the inventory, making sure that, okay, the last time we were here, like we have a lot of people in Midwest states who love hoodies, but then we have a lot of people on the West Coast who only want tank tops. So just making sure that you have all of that stuff ordered. And then once you're on the road, you're in charge of everything, the display, the promoting, the marketing, the sales of everything. And then when you wrap up the tour, you got to get it all back to your merch supplier or so they can put it on an online store. Like the cycle kind of never stops. So preparing for tours now is just being extremely organized. You're in a million email chains, but being organized is like my number one piece of advice because you could be as organized as you want and there's going to be something that just like kind of throws a curveball, messes everything up. But having like your numbers right, I know that I talked to you about this, having all of that organized is just like the biggest key to success. So that's what like preparing and touring looks like now. And we can get more into like a day in the life of tour for sure too if you guys want me to go into that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's
I know like
basically like
there's
the
no
overall
like
prep.
I know there's no like a day to day. Like every day I'm sure is like so different. Everything that you hear is
Mhm.
like, again, like one venue, go moving on to another venue, the people that you're working with, like it's always
Yeah.
working with people. And so I like how you mentioned like being on your toes and being adaptable. I think that's one of the biggest things, but you can go into it too.
Yeah, so like a normal day on tour, you wake up in a new city. And most of the time, you have a driver, so you quite literally wake up like with a bus or a van still moving, and you are on the way to the venue. You know, like, okay, this is the time. Like your tour manager advances with the venue about when you're arriving, when you can load in. Venues will often charge you extra to get there earlier for more prep, which is really but that is business, baby, because they have to have security there who are never there, or someone to greet
Right.
you half the time not there. It's very rare that venue staff is like really up and on it. You accommodate like parking, like the tour manager will accommodate the parking. So you pull up to the venue, you have load in. The headlining band is usually the first to load in, and the opening band is the last one to load in because of the way things come out on stage. Like you have to have like the main kit there and then build in front of it for all the opening bands.
Mm-hmm.
And merch is always like either the first thing in the pack or the thing in the very back. It just depends on the size. Usually it's in the front. So like the second that the doors open and we're on the ground, I'm running to the back because as a merch manager, you get so particular about like clean boxes, strong boxes, good tape, and like not letting anybody touch your things because people will be like, oh, we can help you. And then you just hear a crash and you see like the box that you know in your head, that's the box that's about to break any day now. And you've got a million white t-shirts in the road, boom, unsellable, thousands of dollars worth of product all over the floor, you know? So it's like I make sure that I label all my boxes with like, don't touch or bring into venue or like be careful. And I spend a lot of time doing that because I can't have full control over everything. I am a little bit of a control freak when it comes to my stuff being organized and like good and durable for the whole tour. Learning to let go of control is definitely a big one for me because it like adaptability. You are with different people all the time. Venues are different, cities are different. Unloading into snow as a California girl, I was like, what the hell is going on? Like I'm slipping and sliding, I'm freezing, I don't have the shoes for this, you know, my merch is wet, it's soaking wet, loading in the rain. So you get to the venue, you unload, and then you have to figure out like, okay, where is merch? And it's kind of always a last priority merch, even though it makes everybody on the tour money and it makes your band the most direct money.
Mm-hmm.
And when the first get there, the venue's kind of priority is like the band, like where's my green room? What's the stage setup like? Like what do we have backline here? Which is like, do we have equipment we're renting or we can use that's already at the venue versus us bringing our own? Every band's budget and touring like experience is different with that, and they kind of merch is like an afterthought. And in some venues, it's really obvious. You'll see like a merch area with like racks set up, or it's just a dirty corner. And they're like, oh, we kind of have it around here sometimes. Part of being a merch manager is getting like racks, like these big grid displays that you travel with. They're heavy. You pinch your fingers in them, but it's worth it because if venues don't have a proper display space, then like you always have it. Hangers and binder clips. So like once you get there, you have to unload everything, you count in all of your merch because then when you count out, that'll give you the difference of like what you sold. When I was starting out, there was no at venue, which is a point of sales and inventory system. It was just a notebook and I would just tally everything. I never even counted in or out. I just tallied everything that I sold. Some people have like just Square accounts. Some people have at venue. So you just keep track of selling over the night. And then you pack it all up and you do it all over again. You have to rush and you have somebody from the venue most of the time either staring down your back or like waiting for you to count out so that they can take their cut. And merch cuts are like such a big topic always, but the idea of it came from like the 70s where you couldn't get a Fleetwood Mac shirt at Hot Topic. None of those things even existed. So you were using those venues as a storefront to sell your band's merch. So it made sense to give them a piece of the profit afterwards. But obviously everything is so different now and venues are still increasing like 25 to even maybe 40% of your sales. So that's just really frustrating. And there's tips and tricks to make sure that you save your band money. Definitely, that's the
Mm-hmm.
sneaky side of it. You got to have someone that's good with money or just, you know, can do the social zhuzhing and charming because it's just a big you, honestly, to venues. Like, you can't do that to the bands. And you barely took care of us. There was nobody here. Like, your bathrooms didn't work. It kind of like you factor that on how well you were treated.
Yeah.
Sometimes the venues are really nice and you know it's not their fault. So you're okay with giving it. But again, it's all networking. It's building your relationship with people at those venues. You've come a couple times or they just like the band or they're professional and nice and they treat everyone that comes through. They're the same. So you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, I know you're doing your job. I'll just give you the full 30% or whatever. And then, yeah, you wake up the next day and you do it all over again. And I think the biggest struggle with being a merch manager is you have the least amount of time, like you and the tour manager, because you are working the whole day, not stopping. And the second doors open, your free time as a merch manager is gone. Like you are of service to the public, selling, doing your job until the show's over and then some. So like half the time I don't get dinner for myself. So you have to really rely on the band you're working for to like go get you that, bring you something from catering, make sure they're telling you where you're going. And I'm a vegetarian, so it's always like, what can Rocky eat? Like, what can we bring her back?
Right.
Eating at the merch table. When I was in college, I was doing midterms at the merch table. Like you just kind of live in that one little space. But yeah, that's like a day in the life. It's just a lot of figuring out what you're going to do. And it's kind of like a giant circus, building your little home base for that day and then packing it all up and doing it all over again. And getting to see the show every night is always a bonus.
Right. There was something that you said that really stuck with me where you said like merch is like to the venue and like the whole production that's going on, like merch is always like the last thought. From a fan's perspective, merch is like our number one thought, which is like
Right.
crazy when you think about it that way. Like the experience that you're providing, like most people, we're going to get merch. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
like, again, like knowing
It's
like
like
from a fan.
merch and then food, a drink, bathroom.
Right, but like merch is always like top of the mind. Like, are we getting merch? Where are we going? Da da da. Da. Like that is such a big thing. Like that's a big part of the fan experience. And like you said, like as someone who's been there and like dealt with not fun and not nice sellers, like you want to be, setting these people up for success and having a good night because that they're like you're some of the first people that they see when they walk into the venue, really.
Sometimes like the merch person is the closest people are ever going to get to the band. Like I would kind of just like extract information from merch people when I understood that like not only did they work for them, but you could see on social media like the band's
Okay.
posting about them too and you're like I want to get to know them because it's someone close to the band. And I
Hmm.
think so many people miss the mark of having a merch person who like wants to interact with the fans, who wants to talk with them, not just to get sales out of them, but just because they want to understand the fan base. Because you can make the merch like this portal and like an extension of your art. And I feel like so many people just miss out on that, or they hire the wrong people because it's just their homie that they want to party with. But it's like
Right.
I'm in charge of making everybody their money, which can get a little paralyzing when you think about how like important that is. But it's also just like yeah, like you said, I was on the other side of that. I just wanted to have a good experience and like going to
Hmm.
those repeat shows, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to go to the Paris concert. Like their merch guy is so cool. Or like huge example, I loved Beartooth. Carlos is their merch manager, still is. And I just used to think like he is on top of it. Like he was social. His displays were perfect. I still look up to them to this day. His tip jars were funny. Like he was just so on it. And you could tell it was such a big production, even when it wasn't. Like they carried themselves like huge professionals. And then being on the other side, it's like now he's one of my best buds in merch where if I see we're on the same festival, I'm like, I want to set up next to Carlos because he never once judged me, but he saw like how important it was. Like he had knee surgery on a tour and I was like, put $20 in his tip jar. Like you're out here still doing it. And now I'm on the other side. Like it's just, he's one of the realest people. So it's really cool to see somebody also understand that experience, but then also not judge me from knowing me as a fan, as a professional. That's a whole nother thing too. But
Oh,
yeah, it's just like he understood how important the merch was and like you got to get here, you got to get the exclusive stuff. And he made that an exciting part. Like going to Beartooth shows, I was always thinking about not only the merch, but like getting to see Carlos.
I love that. I love that so much. And something, I mean, we always talk about like the fan to professional pipeline. Like we talk about it all the time and like how it really is like our superpower, I think, understanding the fan experience. It really is. And like obviously there's so much to go into, but something that I thought of when you were talking about like the creation of the merch, like again, like understanding the fan base and understanding what fans really want. Like I'm sure it's must be so fun to think about like, okay, well, if I was their fan, what would I want? What would I want to see?
Yeah.
And like you're in it, like you're a fan of bands still, and you're still going to shows still on your off days, you're still going to shows. So like you still see what the culture is like, and you see that shifting and like how you mentioned like the anniversary stuff and all of that, like being tapped in is so important.
Yeah, and people always condemn fangirls for it, but then those same bands that don't get it are hiring like marketing people who could never understand. Don't even know how to do the research because they don't want to do the research on this fan base because they're still judging them. They're like,
Right.
oh, they're just like weirdo girls or they're fangirls or they're just teenage girls. And it's like teenage girls literally rule the whole world and the whole music industry. Let's start there.
Literally, like,
I
yeah.
wanted to ask though, because I was really interested about how you mentioned, you kind of just glossed over the fact that you design the merch and then also market it. And I want to know, like, how you got into that, as well as like how do you juggle all of these different types of responsibilities? And what is it like for you to actually like go in as a graphic designer, but also as a marketer and also as a salesperson and working inventory? Like you wear a lot of hats and I'm really impressed. But like yeah, how did you even like get into those specific types of like responsibilities or roles?
Definitely selling a lot of ugly merch got me really good. That's the psych degree came in hands where I was like really like the first band I worked for had really just very simple and ugly designs, and it would be crazy because they would blame me if I didn't sell it well. And I was like, you guys just played bad and this design sucks. Like I'm just a girl. There's only so much that I can do, you know? And it also gets to a point where like not often when you're a merch manager on tour do you get to be in charge of the ordering. Sometimes the merch company just does it for you, or you're not there enough, or you're not like, it's just every single band and their financial situation and how big or small their team is totally varies, which is why I think a lot of us end up wearing so many hats. But I think it's a lot of trust in numbers. Like the bands that I work for, I've significantly increased their sales to the point where they actually replaced their old merch people with me, which also is like very daunting because I'm like, I'm so
Like,
sorry. I'm so sorry, but also like, thank you. That also increases the like how much I want to keep doing it, and I never rest. Like both bands, they're always like, can you just like, you don't need to be designing drum heads on the off day, you know, like you can just chill out and have fun. And I'm like, but I never want you to not see how grateful I am to like be doing this. Like every single year that goes by, I'm still like, this is the coolest job in the world, and I can't believe I'm doing
yeah,
it. But yeah, so like with the designing stuff, I mean, I am no I can't do digital art. I'm just sketching. I've got the ideas, and I would always just try to pitch it to bands, and only certain bands that I've worked for have been like, wait, yeah, she's actually cooking with that. Like that makes sense. Where then if they have like most merch companies have digital designers, like visual artists that are doing the designs, or they like pitch it, or they're just slapping like the album artwork with tour dates on the back as a shirt. So I got to have more of a say, and I would be like, we should do this. And it would just kind of be like, well, what do you mean? And I was just like sketching something. Like with As It Is, the first design I like helped pick out was during the pandemic. And they've got this song called Soap. And like one of the big lines is like, we're all the same, we're all the same. And so I was like, oh my God, that's so COVID. Like we all are the same. That whole pandemic knocked us down to a level like, you know, whatever all these different uh, casts and bubbles we're in, we are literally all the same. I was like, why don't we make like a shirt that gives back to like crew that has like your guys' logo and the bar of soap, like we're all the same, like your damn hands or
I love
something.
that.
And so I just like pitched that idea, and they had like a artist that they were working with at the time like do it. And I actually just saw a kid in the UK with that shirt, and I was like, I designed that shirt. And he was like, no way. And he came from Korea for the show. So it's just nuts. I was like, how does some kid in Korea like have a design that I thought of in my room? But so yeah, like with the visual part, it's just like if the band will listen to you, and if they actually value your advice enough to like, because I'm sure a lot of people will say suggestions and the band's like, no, that's fine, we're going to keep doing what we're doing because the label says it's good, the merch company says it's good. But I'm very grateful that bands like listen to me. Also, my room is overfilling with band merch. Like I always tell people, I got into doing merch because I was obsessed with merch. I would save up like $400 for a My Chem show and just put it all down. Like, I'm getting everything in a medium. And I still have all those shirts to this day, even if they don't fit anymore. So the designing part, that the inventory part, you kind of just have to start getting good at. It's a lot of trial and error. Like I am the queen of over ordering. So I'm like, I want to have enough, but it's like, but then we have so much left over. But I'm like, but I don't want to have to like sell up 3X to someone who wears a small. Like again, there's only so much that I can like be like, oh, DIY girl, cut that into a jacket versus like, no, you don't have the design you want, and I'm okay losing that sale. So it's a lot of trial and error with the inventory stuff. And like I said, sometimes you don't get to decide at all, and you kind of just see what the merch company sends you out, and you kind of just have to start getting used to like, okay, this market, this is how many shirts I sell a night. Or like with unwritten law, I have to have XL to 3X sizes. With As It Is, I got to have crop tops and mainly smalls and mediums. Like it's knowing your fan base enough to know what kind of merch they like and the sizing, and then kind of adjusting your sales to that Like, when's the last time we've been to this market? Did we have hoodies last time? Like, remembering your old sales patterns really helps with the inventory part. And then, yeah, just marketing it is, I mean, I spent all of Slam Dunk was the festival I just did with As It Is in the UK. And they just came back as a band after a hiatus. They're touring on a 10-year reissue of their first album. And a lot of people didn't know that we were going on tour this September. So I usually don't promo as hard, but like every single person at a festival, like they're not just there for us. They could just be a casual fan. I would be like, oh, like, well, I don't have that design. Well, we're coming back in September. Do you follow us on Instagram? Like, we'll have more designs there. And like, it genuinely got like 50 people to follow the account, which doesn't sound like much, but that's 50 more tickets. That's 50 more people who
Right.
didn't understand, like didn't even realize that we were back touring, that it wasn't just some festival appearance. So it's like interacting with the fans and just marketing every way that you can, because again, like everybody just wants to be part of something. And that's also something that I feel is like our responsibility at the merch table to do, is make sure that you are, I mean, you are a representative of that band. If you have a bad attitude, like people will know and people will talk. I was like opening band's merch manager for this band called Chase Atlantic was the headliner, and I was working for a band called Cherry Pools, and I broke my foot on that tour. So I was very upset a lot of the time, and it was like 2 weeks left, and I was so proud and stubborn. I was still walking around loading in, wouldn't let anyone help me because I was so scared if I went home or I acted weak that I would get blacklisted, that people would be like, oh, see, this is why girls can't do it. Just working myself into the ground. And there was times where like a lot of the Chase Atlantic fans were very stan culture. They could be very mean at times, like they're vicious. Like I was seen with the bassist one time, and it was like I was on Instagram accounts, like stalker pictures of me across the street. Cherry Pool's merch girl. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And they always, you know, the Chase Atlantic's merch guy had a lot of other stuff to do, or if he's gone, people want merch and they don't always understand that we don't sell all the merch. We just sell the one artist that we're on tour with. And they would get so mad at me that I couldn't sell the Chase Atlantic merch. And I would try to explain it to them. And then I would see them taking pictures of me and complaining and being like, Cherry Pool's merch girl's a bitch, blah, blah, blah. She was so upset. And she faked an injury of why she was upset. Meanwhile, I'm like crying, like, no, my foot's broken. Look, it's black and blue. I'll show you right now. Or she was gone from the merch table. And
Crazy.
it was just so crazy how like quickly people can kind of jump to that conclusion. But yeah, it's just, you don't realize how much people will notice when you're behind there. So I feel like always being on top of like what you're doing, how you're marketing your band, because then it's like, then everybody's like, well, Cherry Pool's kind of rude. And I was like, no, we're not. Like, my foot's just broken. Like, that just shows you how important it is to kind of stay on top of it. And how I have to like really self manage my energy on tour, because kind of skipping around the questions, but you guys, you know, like what makes me a little jaded? Like sometimes I'm exhausted. Touring is really, really hard. Long hours, traveling all the time, being away from like your closest people at home. But I always remind myself, like, people waited weeks for this show. They're really excited. They're not going to ask the smartest questions. Like I always say, like, you're here for fun. I'm here for logic. Like I kind of have to just look at myself in the mirror and be like, this is the best thing ever. You kind of just have to suck it up, get it through it. Not that I'm not happy to be there, but it's just, you know, my energy. I am at the expense of so many people for hours and hours. So like
Mhm.
taking care of myself and just reminding myself like that it's not their fault that I had a rough day. They didn't know we had to like chuck and go with the load in because we were late. They don't know that I don't have a whole inventory of hoodies coming in. We're going to miss out on sales. Like they don't know that, you know, like I broke my foot. Like they don't know any of this. I just have to give them the best experience and also sell the best that I can so that the band I'm with like makes money, that we can keep touring. Because if you don't, then it just doesn't work.
It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy that you don't think about like how dedicated fans are until they're like stalking the opener's merch girl. I think that's
Right.
freaking hilarious.
It's
And I'm
crazy.
sorry for you, by the way.
Crazy. That is
Yeah.
wild.
Um,
Every time I hear that band now in public, I'm like, war flashbacks. Oh my God.
Right. Oh my God. I mean, one thing that I wanted to say was, well, first of all, like kind of on that like jaded question that you touched on, we can go more into it later too, but something that stood out to me that you said is like, you know, looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking like, I'm like, this is like my dream. Like this is what I want to do. Like other people, like understanding that this is like a crazy, crazy it's a crazy, crazy world. It's a crazy, crazy job. You're gonna have crazy fan encounters like that, or maybe, the team you're working with, maybe you don't vibe with them or blah, blah. Like you're gonna deal with a bunch of different like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I think a testament is like you genuinely love it, and that's why you stick through it because it really I always tell this people like the music industry looks so like oh fun, like la da da, I get to go to shows and blah blah, like it looks so fun, but there's just so much more that goes into it, and you really have
Yeah.
to love it
Yeah.
to be able to handle it because it can be really crazy, and you have to be like, well, think about where I was, a few years ago. Like I would literally die to be doing what I'm doing right now. Like I need like whatever's happening, it doesn't matter. We're going to move forward with it because like anybody who like somebody else could have gone through that experience and been like, this isn't worth it. Like I don't want to do this anymore.
And that
But
happens. People quit
yeah.
tours all the time. Warped Tour is a big one where people were like, yeah, I'm done. Like Warped is like the hardest. It was like the Olympics of merch.
Hmm.
And people would quit all the time. And guess what? There's always someone on a bus, on a train, on a flight, like ready to come replace them because again, you jump at every opportunity. But it can be pretty scary how interchangeable it can be and how quick paced. And yeah, if you don't adapt, you literally die. Like it sounds dramatic, but it is. Like touring is so hard.
Yeah.
But it's also
And
it's hard because it's like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And then you get home and you feel like nobody understands you. And you're like, how could you possibly relate like when you've worked the same 9 to 5? And like the
mhm.
highlight of your week
Yeah.
was like watching Love Island or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, how can I tell you how like I got food poisoning, we got stuck in a snowstorm, and I like tried Taco Bell for the first time in a different country all in 24 hours, but like you got a new couch. Like it's just it makes you really disconnected from people, and that's hard too.
Yeah. It's like I'm sure it's like post-concert depression times 100.
Definitely. Also, like you become so close. Like as it is, are genuinely some of my best friends. They're not just my employers. Like they are
Mhm.
people I've connected with on levels I never thought, like friendships that I never thought I could have. And I didn't see them for 5 years until this last tour. And a whole pandemic happened and they live in another freaking country. But it's like then you're not around them anymore. And it's hard to have the same sort of like almost intimacy and just like the level of like friendship. Like just texting somebody feels weird when you're like, we just ripped like a whole sold out show together. And now you're
Mhm.
just like back to your normal person job. And I'm at a tattoo shop working Friday the 13th. Like it's just it almost like you
Mhm.
don't talk at all because it's just not the same. But then on the flip side, you see each other again and it's like no time has passed. But it can
Yeah.
be very lonely and isolating too.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you touched a lot on the different types of burdens that may come with it, or the moments that make you jaded, but also um you have that like drive that to keep going because it is something that you've always wanted to do. I'm wondering what are some like practical things that you've done to help yourself stay grounded or like not let the pressure of having to um save face in front of people who probably doubt you. Like what are certain
Yeah.
things that like keep you going for like self-care, for example?
Yeah. I was really bad at it. And I think sometimes you kind of, before you get what you want, you kind of have to experience a lot of what you don't want. It kind of felt like that. Like I definitely partied way too hard, drank too much, didn't talk to anybody at home. It's just so alluring when even you're connected with the band, people treat you like royalty. Um, and they want to give you anything you want. And there's a lot of stuff at your disposal and attention that you're not necessarily used to if you're not prepared for it. And one of the biggest things that I love and hate about tour is that like the only constant with everything changing is yourself. So if you don't feel secure in yourself, you're not taking care of yourself, like every day will feel like the worst day because there's nothing to ground you and it's so difficult. But it made me grow up a lot on tour and it gave me a lot of self-confidence because I was like, even if I would break down in the bathroom, I'm having a breakdown in the bathroom of like the House of Blues in Orlando, Florida, and Disneyland is next door. Like this is so cool. But I think, yeah, I had to really learn to let go of the FOMO. I still have FOMO, especially because I just love the bands I work for. I'm like, it's no fair. Like, doors are in a half hour. You guys get to have a little family dinner. You get to like chill and like warm up together. And I'm just with the fans. Like it can just feel like I don't even get to be with my touring party. I'm separated from them. But getting rid of that and understanding that like I'm crushing it for them has helped. It's a lot of just like being aware of where my thoughts go and catching when they're negative and being like, I don't have to do this, I get to do this. And then with self-care, it's just giving up. Like, you don't have to go out every night. Like, it actually rocks to get like a full night of sleep before a huge day. I used to like be like, okay, I've been separated from everybody for so long, let me pack up and then get on the bus and like drink to catch up with everybody, or like spend all night, hang out and like be up, and then I'm exhausted the next day, and then I'm not doing the job that I know I can do the best. But it's like I was constantly running on fumes because I didn't want to miss out on anything. So letting go of that and like just learning to like, okay, I'm gonna make time today no matter what. Like for me it's makeup. Like I feel like it's a little bit of glamour magic. I don't feel like I have to wear makeup, but it definitely helps with sales too, to be like, damn girl, your wing is so sharp, or what glitter is that? You know, and it just makes me feel better. Like, okay, I feel presentable today. Because half the time you're loading in like flip flops, pajamas, makeup on from yesterday, hair up in a bun. Like everybody's at their worst. It's always funny waiting in lines for shows. When I was a kid, you'd see like a band pull up and you're just like, oh, damn, they look rough. Because like we're going through it, you know? You're just like crawling to the venue. Like, I need a real bathroom for the first time in 15 hours. I want to take a shower today. So just like making sure that no matter what happens, I always make sure like I'm going to have that time. I'm putting my headphones on, I'm watching Drag Race, or I'm listening to my favorite album, and I'm going to do makeup in a shitty venue bathroom with no lighting, or in the van because it's the only mirror, you know, like I just find the time to do my makeup. That way I feel like, let's do this. Like it's kind of just like my armor almost. And then I go into the day. So like getting rid of the FOMO and making sure I have time to like, I used to really work out a lot, but it's so physical anyway. I don't anymore, but just finding the time to like connect with my body in some sort of way, like eat my favorite food, go get coffee, or do my makeup has helped so much. Cause then it's like I'm letting myself relax and I'm letting myself reset for the huge night I have ahead. Cause if you don't do that, you're just going to run yourself into the ground or make bad decisions. And it's not worth losing the job for like at all.
My gosh, there's so much. I feel like we're like so on this topic. We haven't even gotten into any of the other questions. Just like a couple of other things on the touring subject, and then we'll go into some other more general stuff about like some of your other experiences too. Just on like a lighter question before we go into another like deeper question, just to lighten the mood a little bit. But obviously you've had so many amazing experiences at, you know, working festivals and so many shows, and of course the touring. Like what like experience out of like from the past 10 years you think stands out as being one of the most memorable, like the best in the best way?
I mean, Warped Tour, like that was a dream for me. I watched Warped Roadies on Fuse TV as a kid. I didn't even know that you could tour like that. And then to get my first Warped Tour and like see the people I saw on TV every day and just like being there, it was like the hardest thing I've ever done. The most grueling. You could do merch because it's like outside, you're building a tent from the ground up. You're out there all day. There's fire ants, there's floods, there's storms. But every day I would see that inflatable stage go up and like hear bands, and I would see the kids run like right when they open the gates. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm still those kids and I'm literally here. And I got in on the last 2 years and I'm so lucky because I didn't think I'd be able to do it at all. I didn't know it was going to end. And I got to be on the last full run of Warped Tour. And that was just like, I feel bad that people don't have that as a resume thing anymore. Cause from that point on, I had Vans Warped Tour for 2 years on my resume and no one ever questioned if I could do any job. Be like, oh, you're a production assistant, but you did Warped Tour, you got this. And it's like, it was like a boot camp, but I was so happy to be part of it and like meet my heroes, like Lisa Brownlee, who's a legendary tour manager. Like I'm doing pickleback shots with her at the barbecue. Like it's just so crazy, like meeting your heroes and learning from them and getting to like do it. That's definitely like one of the most memorable things. And then I think touring internationally too. I like didn't think that that would happen for me ever. And now I've been like 7 times overseas, which is a blessing and super crazy.
Oh, I love that. Also, Warped Tour is literally like back and happening this weekend. So like
Yeah.
crazy. There was something else I wanted to bring up also because obviously like I think a lot of people look down on fans who want to get into music and get into touring and things specifically because it's always like, oh, she just wants to be friends with the band. Oh, she just wants to get with the band or like
Mm-hmm.
there's always that thought. And like obviously you've been really lucky to have amazing experiences and amazing connections with your like your team and these bands and everything, but you also talk a lot about how like you put in the work to get there and you genuinely like you show that you're there because you care about the craft, you care about everything, you care about them as a band, you care about them as people, and through that you've been able to build those genuine like relationships. But like do you have any thoughts or any like anything you want to share about people who are maybe getting in like with maybe not the best intentions or just like any experiences that you could kind of touch on in that on that topic?
So many. Yeah, it wasn't always easy. There's definitely so many times where I was questioning, like, this is my dream, but this is what I'm having to put up with. And I felt guilty. Like when you call your mom and you feel guilty for telling her like what's going on, that's when I felt bad because I was like, I had this whole medical path in front of me, and my family wanted me to go after, what made me happy because they knew I was like smart and intelligent and I could do it. But then they're also like, is this the best thing for you to be around people like this? Like there is a lot of drugs and alcohol and some violence in this scene. There's predators that get allowed to be played, on festival lineups and stuff. And I definitely ran into a lot of bands that I thought I had to earn my stripes by working for free. I was scared to like use my voice when I was getting wronged because I just didn't want to get blacklisted, especially as a girl. Like everyone thinks you're sleeping with the band. Everybody thinks you're not smart. And even if you aren't, because you should be allowed to, because all the guys do it, even if you aren't, people are always going to think you are. So it's kind of like this prejudice. People are always like, oh, you're just someone's girlfriend, right? You must be one of their wives. Or like, oh, you were a daughter. Like it has to be something other than the fact that I worked here, I'm smart, and I know what I'm doing, and I actively keep working to get better at it. Um, yeah, I think just definitely working for free when I was trying to get my start and doing it for as long as I did, I regret, but it's unfortunately kind of the way it was in the pocket of music I work for. I don't think it's the same in like hip hop, R&B, country. I'm not in those, but especially like the Warped Tour esque post hardcore scene that I got my touring start in, a lot of misogyny. And I was young. I was like 19 or 20. I was gay because I'm bisexual, and I was a woman of color. So I had like 3 strikes. And I didn't even realize I got some opportunities because the bands thought I was hot and they thought they could sleep with me. I thought it was because I was like, oh, they see how smart I am. Like they want me to go on tour with them. And then it was like, oh, now you're trying to like hit on me, and this makes me feel like because you actually didn't care about my talent. Like you were hire me for my looks, or she's hot, she could sell our t-shirts. And I was like, that sucks. Because on one end, I grew up being the weird emo girl that wasn't always desirable. So you would think like people think I'm hot now, but then it's like, no, this is my dream. And that sucks that you just thought of me on such a surface level when I'm so obviously passionate about this and I want to make a difference and I want to help change the tide so that it's not just a giant dude fest and a giant misogyny fest. But it is hard. And there's definitely situations where I was like, I'm thankful it got me the opportunities, but if I could go back, I would just like not do that. But you just don't know. You don't know while you're in it. So that's why I'm so passionate about like if I see an injustice or I see somebody like I really want to do this, but these are the circumstances. I'm like, trust me, babe. Like I know opportunities don't always come along, but there is something about the universe rewarding you for choosing yourself where it will like it's you're losing this opportunity because it wasn't meant for you in the first place. Like, and by choosing yourself, you're gonna get rewarded with something that is for you. And standing up for what's right is never wrong. Like all the hard work I put in never went unnoticed. So it's like you live and you learn, but there's definitely those hard things where I was working for free, not being treated well, and I would just like wish I could protect little Rocky, but she stood her ground.
Yeah. And when you talking about like working shows and it's like a sausage fest, like it made me think about, like something that I said recently. So because we recently worked a couple of shows together, and we had it was like a 10 of like team local assistants, all women, and I was like,
And
I
one guy,
oh yes, and I was
one
like
guy.
literally just one. I was like, this is so it made me so like happy and excited to see like, and that was like it was a stadium show. It was like crazy, but like a team of women and like we were getting everything done. Made me
Yeah,
so
and
like this
predominantly like
like
women of color too, and young. I was the
yes.
oldest one there at my ripe age of like 30. And I was like, look at all of us killing it. Like that's just yeah, it's cool because it wasn't like that 10 years ago.
Yeah, and it makes me so excited for like everything to come. Like most of the gigs I work, it's like I'm always working with women. Like it's just so like inspiring to see that. And I think that's why like it's cool to have you on the pod too, because like even I mean, happy Pride, like being like, being like being bi, being a person of color, being a woman, like all of these things, like you think like, oh, like everything's against me, but like no, not in this day and age. Like we're gonna, keep it moving.
Yeah.
I do want to acknowledge that, like, I think it's such a sad thing that you've had to endure these types of prejudices and these types of biases. Um, because, like Joanna is saying, I've seen in the couple of shows that I've worked, the crews have been predominantly women, but then, like, you encounter some of these men that are very prejudiced and they live in, like, their mind's still in the 80s or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that like you who has an incredible resume, like you've worked so many incredible gigs and you also have so much experience and strength and like resilience under you that like people still look at you and only take you for face value and don't actually look at you for your worth, right? Like I think
Yeah.
there's something so disheartening that it's still such a predominant mindset among crews that are especially mostly predominantly male,
Yeah.
which proves that we have a
Yeah.
long way to go in terms of change. But
Mhm.
hopefully, like Joanna said, it's a change for the better.
Yeah.
Um,
Making strides to, what we eventually want it to be, but there's definitely still work that has to be done, obviously. But like talking about it, empowering like young girls and women who are like scared to get into it because it is scary. It's intimidating. Like
Yeah.
thinking about like, oh, I'm going to be on this tour and I'm going to be the only woman. It's scary.
Yeah, I was the only woman on a metal tour. I like really went outside of my comfort and I worked for a headliner and the co-headliner. So I was working for two bands. And if you know anything about metal merch, there's a lot of it. So I was selling over like 40 t-shirts and I didn't know these crews at all. And I was the only girl on a bus that held three bands full of men. And I had to, like, the first night, everyone's getting to know each other. And I just felt really scared because there is that reputation of that kind of music and that age group of men just being degrading or being judgy or thinking that something's going to happen. And I scared the out of them. And the first night I was like, just so you know, I will not be your fucking girlfriend. I will, like, you will not touch me. You will not touch my stuff. You will not mess with my money. You will not touch my drinks. Like, you will not mess with me or I will kill you. And they were like, Jesus Christ. And I was like, no, because honestly, I didn't tell them, but I was like, I'm scared. Like, there's just one of me. There's all these men that I don't know, and I'm traveling on a bus. And a lot of the time, men will not, they'll follow suit or they'll be afraid to say something when someone else is doing something. They won't stop their homies from being misogynistic or being weird or advancing on somebody. And then I had basically I had like 40 men as my like protectors the rest of that tour. Like there were no creeps. We did have a problem with our bus driver, but they fired him. That's pretty common. And then it was like, there was this Brazilian band named Christian, and they'd be like, Miss Rock, you let us know if you want us to walk you into the venue. We won't let anybody mess with you. And I was like, yeah, that's right. I got these like huge Brazilian metal guys like on my side. So it was nice that I was able to kind of switch the tide, but it was also really important that I had hard conversations with them because I set my boundaries really quickly and they would ask me questions like is it hard, or they would be like, this is like what I'm used to, and like they would ask me outdated questions. Like they were afraid to try a White Claw because like that's gay. And I was like, shut up and drink it, Gary. Like you're gonna like it and you need to lose weight anyway and stay off the beer. And it was having those questions and having those conversations and letting them sound crazy and also letting them feel safe around me to kind of mess up and ask me about new queer terminology, ask me about like genuinely caring about my experience, or have them see it happen to me at merch. We're loading out and someone's like, oh, look at that fine piece of ass. And they're helping me load it. And they're like, yo, what the Like it was important to let my guard down enough to let them be open with me so that we could both learn from each other. And what I learned from them too is that they're scared to kind of change their mind and to have an open mindset about things. They're scared that if they're learning something and they use the wrong pronouns, that someone's going to yell at them and it's going to discourage them to keep trying. And I also learned about like, it's hard for me, but like there was a level of grinding back in the day when it came to touring that like they just don't see people earning now. And even though I thought, maybe it shouldn't have been that way, maybe we shouldn't have set those standards, it was also important for me to be like, okay, I need to listen to them and I could learn so much from them. So it was mutually beneficial, but it only was that way because it was a scary place at first and it was a gray area and we both trusted each other enough to like have that conversation. And now I'm actually going to go see that band tomorrow at the Ritz, so I get to see them again.
Love. It's wild how you explained that, you stood your ground right away and you drew your boundaries, and everyone's like, whoa, like you're overreacting. But this comes from real life experiences and real life
Yeah.
things that like women have to deal with. Like not just women, but like everybody. And it's like it stems from, a genuine, fear. Like there's a possibility, like we're not saying that this is like, this is never gonna happen, and it's like
Yeah.
messed up that, you have to be in a position to say that because it is a
Yeah.
possibility, you never know.
Yep. Definitely.
I want to get into one of the questions because it's kind of on this topic already, with like, everything that you've gone through and like just sharing tips and tricks. But like I said at the beginning, when we were introing you and everything, you said something where it's like your goal to share knowledge to people who are rising up in order to help them avoid the challenges and the prejudices that you've gone through and give them, a little bit of peace of mind and like know what to go into. And I feel like this whole podcast is already like going into that. But are there any other like tips or stories that you'd be willing to share that might help somebody if they get into a similar situation?
Yeah, I would think, do it if you're even if your voice shakes. That's like a saying that I hear a lot, especially with like our socio-political climate that's happening. Any way that you can get out there and use your voice is important, but there are a lot of situations where it's scary and you feel like your job is at stake. But like I only got where I was because I wasn't afraid to ask questions. And I mean, maybe be a little bit annoying, but like just to not be afraid to ask questions if you don't know how to do something, like faking it till you make it is definitely the way to get by in this industry, but definitely don't fake it so much that you're gonna like ruin something, like blow up a stage because you didn't plug something in right, or order too much and like mess up something money wise. Like always don't be afraid to ask questions because like the most substandard guy you've ever met is doing it too. Like I've worked with tour managers not even a week ago where I was like, you aren't answering your phone, you're late and you don't care. And it's almost such a negative experience where I was like, you know what, yeah, everybody keep trying because there's people at the top who are there and don't care to know what they're doing and they don't want to. So like just don't be afraid to try and don't be afraid to ask questions, but also like know your worth. Like there's going to be something in your gut that is, if it ticks you off, don't ignore it and don't fully push it down, but just know that like if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And just kind of really weigh with yourself, like, is this worth it? Or do I think that I could network another way and get another opportunity? Because working for free or allowing yourself to be disrespected in any way in a situation to get far, like it's not worth the mental health and it will kill like that dream. So I think just like that's my biggest thing is just know when you're taking, like when you feel like you're getting taken advantage of, and be like really as confident as you can be. It's hard because you don't always feel it, but just know that like you are worthy of doing whatever job you set your heart on. And as long as like your heart's in it, like don't, like you deserve to be there just as much as anybody else. And I always joke, like, have the confidence that every like middle-aged white guy has, because I mean, they're like, they can do whatever they want. They're CEOs of businesses. They're in the stock market, like, why couldn't we do the same? And just know that like, it's kind of fun to fight the fight. Like, yeah, I'm like gonna outlift all my merch boxes and sell more than you. And I'm going to have a winged liner and I'm going to have a cute outfit on. And I'm going to call you girl and you're a 50-year-old man and it might piss you off, but like, welcome to the new age, baby. Like, you just got to do it. And it gets
Right.
easier. It's like a muscle that's not trained. The more you stick up for yourself and the more you ask questions, and the more you do it, like this, less scary it is. And then
Mhm.
you kind of see like where the cracks are. Like, why don't you want me asking this question? Like, why is this system something that is like not working for you anymore? Because I'm simply asking about it, or I'd like to see the behind the scenes of it, or I'm asking why these decisions are being made. That can kind of help guide you too. If people get unsure when you do ask questions, then it's kind of like, this isn't the right thing for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so much we could still draw on that conversation. I think we've exhausted our limits. Um, but every single thing that you've said is incredibly important, and I'm not going to deny that. Um, and I hope that anyone listening, even if they're just starting out or even like it's their third tour, I don't know, um, take something away from that because I think there's something really important about setting your boundaries and also standing up for yourself and not being afraid of uh, people like getting upset because you have your own boundaries or you want to you want to show that you can do something, right? But to pivot the conversation, um, I want to talk about a little more unconventional gigs that are not necessarily about touring, but still relevant to your merch experience. So I know that you worked your first Coachella, which slay,
Yes, thank you.
as a lounge manager for the YouTube Creators Lounge. So how did that opportunity come about? And like, what was that experience like? Would you do it again?
Yeah. It came out of pivoting again and being adaptable. Like after COVID, it was really hard. Nobody was really touring. And if they were, it was kind of taboo. And it was like they had all these things. And the pandemic did something to my psyche that I wasn't prepared to like deal with until like in therapy, like 2 years, like these last 2 years, where I was at the peak of my dream and it got ripped away. And I immediately went into survival mode with health and all the stuff happening at home. I just really couldn't grasp the idea that like I'd worked so hard and I had the best 2 years of my life and it all got ripped away. I didn't deal with it in the right ways. But then I found myself at a food bank job and I really loved that, being of service to my community as someone who's grown up like food insecure and not having a lot of money or having uncertainty. Because I knew even a bad day at the warehouse was like helping to feed somebody and help them. And I really loved that part. But then I was still, gigs came back and I was like working with my bosses at the food bank, like, okay, if I get off earlier, I switch this shift, like, can I leave a little bit early, or lying and saying I had doctor's appointments so I could go work a gig. And it got to the point where Unwritten Law was touring again. And they were like, okay, we need you on tour. And I was like, for sure. And my boss wouldn't let me have like a leave of absence because I felt like my heart was in both places. And they didn't like that I was going to be leaving that job for another job. And I just thought like, Unwritten Law can't tour with anybody else, but this food bank will find someone to fill my job. So like I was like, okay, I quit. And that was really scary, but trusting myself again. And I didn't know how to, you know, work in the music industry again on kind of a gig local level. I knew how to tour and I was in a position where I didn't want to tour as much. So I was kind of back to being on Indeed and I saw a post for a production assistant from a staffing company who helps connect production companies with staff to work these events. And I was like, well, again, I could do that. Everybody on tour wears multiple hats. I feel like I toured, I could definitely be a production assistant. And then I interviewed with them and they immediately were like, okay, so based on your background, we're going to make you supervisor. And I was like, the hell do I know about being a supervisor? Like, so like, here's 20 other production assistants you'll be in charge of. And it was a market I didn't know at all, didn't know what the hell I was doing. But it was the same skill set as touring, being adaptable, being resourceful, the jargon and the language and learning the different structures of leadership was a challenge, but I love learning. So it was exciting to like learn all of that and learn a new skill set. But I just started doing production work and I ended up being like an inventory specialist and an office manager and a supervisor. So it was basically just like coming into these corporate events, learning what the event was, what it entailed, if this room needed to get swapped from a meeting room to a banquet, like what furniture do we need to build? What time does, when the crowd is in a meeting, we go have this time to flip it. We have this huge event. This is the 17 pages of inventory. Like they couldn't really find people that had a good enough brain to like, or, a grasp on it to be like, that's a lot of inventory. It's always getting lost. And I was really good at that because I'm used to like, truckloads of merch and keeping track of it all the time. So I really shined in that department and then just kind of managing a team and knowing like, okay, we need a production assistant over here to help with this. We need someone who's good with furniture building over here. So I started doing that work and I've done that for almost 3 years now. And it's really exciting because it's something I can do where I do travel sometimes for it, but it's mainly like being on the ground. And corporate money is crazy. And it has given me the financial freedom to not take every single gig that can kind of be exhausting music just to pay the bills. That's like also such a blessing because in the beginning, you do have to be scrappy and drive 4 hours to work a gig you're going to get paid $80 for just to get your name out there and to connect. Like it is exhausting, but now I've kind of gotten to the point where I can be more choosy with the music because I'm doing these corporate gigs that pay me a lot. And yeah, that led me to Coachella and they needed like a back of house kind of lounge manager to help like all the YouTube executives feel comfortable in the trailers, make sure they were all stocked. make sure that all the other trailers had waters, to make sure the activation, we do popsicles at this hour. Is all the like ice cream in the storage? Do we have the fridge plugged in? All of that stuff. And it was very challenging to live in the desert for 3 weeks. It was exhausting, exhausting. I could never get used to it. You never feel like you're drinking enough water. Like slather myself in Aquaphor and just lay on the bed like a zombie. It didn't feel like enough. I would definitely do it again. It was so rewarding. And it was, again, one of those things where everything lined up so perfectly. Like I turned 30. I saw Lady Gaga and Green Day, which are two artists that have like shaped my like punk rock heart from the time I was a kid, and getting to see them right after I was done with my shift. I was like, this is so cool. And people there couldn't believe, again, this isn't a music industry. They're like, you have the energy. Like you were just in the Green Day pit. I'm like, yeah, I was in the Green Day pit. Like I didn't have to pay for my ticket to be here. I'm gonna be in the pit. Like I'm gonna be there because this is crazy. Like I'm at Coachella for free. I'm getting paid to be here. And it was cool. It's always so cool to learn new skills, because now flip-flopping, I'm gonna be stepping up and tour managing as it is. And I feel like I wouldn't have been, and as also being merch manager, I don't think I would have felt confident enough to say yes to that if I didn't have this production experience. It's like getting any sort of experience, as weird as it is, like this little gig. Like we worked Coldplay the other day, Joanna and I, and there was a prep day where I had to unwrap over 3,000 water bottles, and there was so much trash. And I could see that people didn't know how to contain the trash. And I was like, I worked at a food warehouse. I know how to like get this in order. And it's like just weird how these little skill sets end up paying off later. But yeah,
Mhm.
I always, my family jokes that I have a million jobs, and it's so true. Like I have a hard time telling people even what I do, because I'm like, I'm doing corporate, I'm working a tattoo shop, I'm working, VIP, I'm doing merch, but it all just kind of builds off of each other, and it's the same skill set, and weird opportunities come along, and I've just learned to like lean into them, because it's like you never know what it's going to amount to, who you're going to meet, and how those skills kind of backpack off each other is really fun. Because like I got to drive a forklift in Australia and load in our equipment, because they were like, oh, you're gonna have to load through the venue full of people. And I was like, there's a forklift dock, like our guy's not here. And I was like, but your girl is. And I'm certified because I learned at the food bank. And they didn't even question me. They didn't have to see my certificate or anything. And I was just loading in our equipment with the forklift. And I was like, this is so weird, but like how funny. The band I worked for, like, when did you learn how to do that? And I was like, pandemic, baby.
You've lived so many lives.
I know, it's crazy.
I was literally gonna ask, like, do you need don't you need a forklift license? But I
I
guess
did
you got
have one.
one.
They just didn't ask to see it.
That's crazy. I
I
think
love that.
I love that you've taken on so many different types of roles and gained so many different types of skills from different types of jobs, even if they are like tangential to what you want to do. Like working in a food bank, it still has so much value, even if it's not like your priority as like a career. Um, and I think I really admire that, because my mentality is like, well, I cliche, but like you only live once, and there's so much you could take from your entire experience living. Like any type of role or any type of job that you can take, even if it's like working Friday the 13th at a tattoo shop. There's so much value in every experience that you have. And look at you now. I mean, like all of those minor experiences have like led you to these bigger ones, because they all like compound with one another. And I think that's a really good takeaway for anyone listening, because we tend to like get jaded about like, well, this is not necessarily the industry that I want to work in, and then therefore I won't take this job or
Yeah.
whatever. So we tend to like not appreciate these types of experiences. And I think there's like, from what I'm hearing from your story, there's so much to take away from every experience, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's like no role is too little. Like I think especially getting into it, like I think everyone kind of falls victim to this. Like when you're getting into it, you're like, what do you mean I'm not starting as a tour manager? What do you mean I'm
Yeah.
not like where, 10 years later, like that's the realistic trajectory, like you have to work your way to doing that. Like I'm sure Rocky 10 years ago was probably like, I want to do this and I want to do this, but like, you have to work your way up to that and then like prove yourself in that way. Like build these skills, build these tiny, minuscule things that like you'll need for when you're in that role. Because realistically, if you started as a tour manager, you'd be like
That
way
tour would
out
have
of
never
your
left the ground.
expanse. Yeah. And so I think in the beginning it can be very like the struggle of like, "Ugh, well, I don't want to be, working like this whatever job at the bottom of the totem pole. Like I want to be up here, but it's like you have to start somewhere. And like we're hearing from you, like no experience is too little.
Yeah. You also too, like it helps you, I mean, at least the way I exist in this entire realm of like live entertainment and live event production is like it helps to start at the bottom because as you're building these processes and you're building out these events and you're putting them on, you know what it's like to be the doorman, you know what it's like to be the ticket man, you know what it's like to be every, like you've kind of had to do it all, or at the very least you can empathize and you know the process that that person's doing, and it just helps to build like that team atmosphere and be like, I'm going to go check on the ticketing girl because I know she can't leave, I know these are her hours, like there's just little ways to support the people you're also on the tour with because you've been in their role or you've been there, or to also be like, that part of this process maybe doesn't have to be this hard, let's rethink this, because you have that empathy and that knowledge. Like I think if you're doing it right, you should also always be thinking about how we can make this better, more sustainable. Like with the As It Is guys, they totally found a point where they're like, we're doing this because we're obligated to, and this isn't fun anymore, and taking time away from it, and then naturally coming back and being like, we actually do want to do this again, but how are we going to tour now where it's sustainable and we're not burning ourselves into the ground? And I think, sometimes taking a step back is important too.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, okay, this has been like over an hour long. So first off, like, sorry to everybody for how long this is, but I think that there's so many little nuggets, and I hope like if anybody's listened all the way through, like you've definitely been able to soak up like a lot because I'm already like taking so many mental notes about it. But obviously, like I said, you've lived so many lives in like the past 10 years. You're going into tour managing, obviously, that's amazing. Like there's so much more, I'm sure, but like now where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Whew. I feel like I haven't thought about that question since I was like 19 and freaking out about these last 10 years. Um, I think I definitely have like a laundry list of things in my head that I haven't gotten to do yet. And I'm excited because I always thought I'd stay in my merch lane. Like I always thought I'd work Coachella doing merch. I would never expect I'd be at the YouTube creators lounge in like the backstage area. But I think just I'm excited to not be afraid anymore to like go after all these different things. Like even if I kind of have to start at the bottom with some stuff, like I get to do that. Like I've worked enough where like I get to try these new roles. So um I don't know. I see myself in the next 10 years, maybe starting a company of my own or doing something more with my degree with mental health on the road. I kind of have always seen myself kind of going back to what I went to school for. And I was definitely in college writing papers on the stuff going around me. So I think maybe getting more mastery under my belt of the tour, then I can kind of go on that meta level and be like, how can we introduce more resources for people? And I think like tour managing and stuff like that's going to help me understand those processes, like I talked about, more to be able to see like what can we restructure to make this easier for everybody, to support more resources. So I definitely see myself doing something more with my career that way, or kind of maybe starting an event production or coalition of my own in some way, because I just want to keep passing on the knowledge and helping people learn stuff before they have to learn it the hard way is something I'm really passionate about. So doing something like that and working for My Chemical Romance at some point. That's the goal. That's always been the life goal. It
Yeah.
has to happen. Even if I
No,
hate it and I met my heroes, it's got to happen.
I mean, I'm manifesting that for you. I feel like the space, you're already in the space. Like the
Yeah.
crazy thing is like when you're it's like the weirdest thing when you start working in music, you're like, oh, this person knows this person who is connected to like my favorite artist. And you're just like, whoa, you have to take a step back and you're like, this is
Yeah.
like crazy dream world that I'm in. It feels fake.
Yeah. It does feel fake sometimes.
Yeah. But okay, I'm sure everybody has learned so much, but if anybody has any questions that they want to like reach out to you specifically, like are you open to sharing like your LinkedIn or your Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not quite adult enough to have a LinkedIn, but I'm always available on Instagram. Instagram's kind of been my open, messy resume my entire life. Like I've never deleted anything. You can go back to when I was a fan and see all the archives of me being a One Direction fangirl and all that nine. So yeah, Laserpunk is my handle. I'm always open for advice. If you just want to share a story, hear more about it. When I get the time, I always respond to everything because I think it's just so important. So yeah, definitely open for that.
Love.
Thank you
And
so much.
by this time
Sorry.
we have like a post up already about just like a little bit more of a condensed version of like everything that we kind of go into. If anybody wants to go check that out on the Jada Productions Instagram, we're going to be posting that there as well. And then we'll be tagging Rocky, so you'll be able to find her that way as well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for having me. This was awesome. Very open conversations, and that's what it takes. And I'm very honored to be someone that you guys want to talk to and hear about.
Oh my God, of course. Thank you. This is like, I mean, obviously, again, like hearing about like the behind the scenes of this world, I feel like is always so cool. And like you don't really know until you're in it. And
Mhm.
like I've gotten a little bit of a taste, Kelly's gotten a little bit of a taste, but like hearing everything that you've been able to experience, like that's really like the only type of things you hear from the actual people. Like that's not the stuff you see
Yeah,
on TV.
definitely.
This has been such an enriching conversation. So I'm really appreciative of your time and also your advice and your openness to all of our questions. Um and so like we said, we're gonna have a condensed version of this on our Instagram if people even made it this far. Um
I hope so. I hope it was so good that they had to
Of
stay.
course. Of course. So yeah, so this is the end of our podcast episode. Thank you so much for listening if you've listened, and this has been another episode of A Little Jaded.